It's time for the 1430 Connection on 1430 WNAV and 99.9 FM, spotlighting news, newsmakers, and important community issues. Now, with this week's edition of the 1430 Connection, here is WNAV news anchor Donna Cole.
Welcome to the 1430 Connection. I'm Donna Cole. In the studio with me is Katherine Fominykh. She is a Capital Gazette sports writer. She, that's an important word here. I like to focus on people that are the first in this, first in that, first in whatever it is. And Katherine appears to be a first. Katherine?
Hi.
Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks. I'm glad to be here.
So the first in, tell me what that's all about.
I'm the first full-time sports writer at the Capitol who's female. There have been other part-time writers in the past, but, this is the first we believe to be the full-time employed.
That's kind of a cool thing. You
Yeah.
realize that, right?
Yeah, no, I didn't realize that. I mean, when I got hired, it happened so fast, I didn't really think about, am I the first, whatever, how many other people have been here in the past.
At what point did it dawn on you? Not until, when I reached out, or?
No, someone
Okay.
told me. I think it was either Dave Broughton, who used to be the sports editor, or maybe Rick Hutzel told me. They said, oh, by the way, I think you're the first one. I thought, oh, okay, I guess that makes sense.
It's amazingly cool. Did you kind of have a moment of,
and
my gosh?
Even then, it was okay, well, I mean, this is a small paper. At any given time, there's only 2 full-time or 3 full-time sports writers, so the odds are always going to be low. But I think it hit me really the first time when I went to cover a field hockey game, and the coach, when I introduced myself, said, oh my God, a woman. We haven't had one of those before. It was exciting. She was excited, and I thought, okay, maybe this is kind of cool.
Tell me about your background. You grew up in Maryland, yes?
Yeah, I was born in New York, and I bounced around a lot when I was little, but I grew up basically since I was about 5 in Maryland. I went to Pikesville Elementary School for a little while, then Westwood, and then I think that's what it was called. It was so long ago. And then I went to Dumbarton Middle in Baltimore County, and then Carver Center for the Arts in high school.
Arts and athletics?
It was arts and tech, yeah. And that was an athlete in high school. It was kind of okay, that's fun. It wasn't really
So you were not an athlete?
I did equestrian. I did softball for a season, and then almost broke my arm, and my mom said, that's it, we're not doing that anymore. I wasn't really good at practicing either. I was a terrible softball player. But I did equestrian for a while.
And artsy?
Yeah, super artsy. Yeah, I was more into painting pictures of athletes than actually playing sports.
Do you still paint?
Yeah, I kind of fiddle around on iPad sometimes, yeah.
We had a short conversation before the interview started. I said that I had looked at Emerson College in Boston when I was going away to school, and ended up at BU, right next door, because Emerson was too small, but you did it in reverse, you said.
Yeah, no, I went to look at BU. I thought it was too big. My mom said the dorms looked like Soviet apartments, which she would know because she, has Soviet experience. And we kind of, on a whim, looked at Emerson because I had a friend who said that they were going to check it out, and we had some extra time when I was looking at schools, and I just loved it. I think after I got in, and I got into a couple other places, we came back to visit, and they were just showing us the facilities and all the high-tech journalism facilities, because Emerson has some of the best journalism facilities in the country. And I just decided, I was like, Mom, we're going to go down the street, we're going to go register, we're going to I'm registering for college, that's it, this is what we're doing.
And you knew you wanted to study journalism when you went to college?
Yeah.
And sports journalism in particular?
I was not 100% sure I was going to do sports, because I had volunteered in my mother's public defender's office. So I thought, maybe criminal journalism. I really enjoyed, doing that for a while. But then pretty quickly, I just found my voice in sports journalism, and I didn't look back after that. Okay,
these two things kind of explain your cover photo on Twitter. I'm guessing maybe Facebook too.
Oh God, I haven't used my Facebook in a long time.
Because you're young, you're on Snapchat, let me guess, right?
No, Snapchat's out now.
Okay.
Yeah, it's more about Instagram.
I should say, let me go back. You graduated from Emerson in what year? In 2018? Bachelor's in journalism. You came to this area from the Boston Globe sports desk.
Yeah.
That's kind of something.
Yeah, that kind of happened a little bit by accident. I was working at Starbucks because I had a lot of jobs when I was in college, because I basically moved out as quickly as they would let me. And this guy walked in who had a Globe, I think it was an ID or some kind of identification that said he worked at the Globe, and I was chatting with him because I had been doing unpaid sports things, and I wanted to actually get paid. And it was a little bit past the date to apply for the internship. I just lost track because I was working like 2 jobs at the time.
Right.
And he said, you know what, just apply anyway, see what happens. And I reached out to Apollo Book Night, and I said, like, hey, like, I know it's late, but here's my stuff. And it turned into an internship, and then I stayed on for another couple of months after that, just doing, high school swimming, high school softball, and then whatever else they wanted me to do.
Okay, back to that cover photo on Twitter, their
Yeah.
profile photo. I believe it's probably taken by Paul Gillespie, who's a Capitol photographer, and he's been working on a beautiful Journalists Matter project following the shooting. But let's talk about the hat.
Oh, okay. So I worked at the team store in the first couple of years of college at Fenway Park, and so I used my
The team
discount.
being
The Red Sox.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I bought that hat with my discount, and it's my hat, my Red Sox hat that I've worn just all the time. I covered a lot
you're
of
a
games.
Boston team
Oh yeah.
fan.
Oh yeah.
So
I'm
you're
a
like-
Boston fan. I
yeah.
know people kind of back away a little bit. They think, oh, okay. Patriots fan, Red Sox fan for the most part. But I do have one DC allegiance. I do love the Mystics. So
Okay.
yeah.
Right, very good. Let's come back. Let's take a short break. We'll be right back on the 1430 Connection. Welcome back to the 1430 Connection. I'm Donna Cole, and in the studio with me today is Katherine Fominykh. She's a Capital Gazette sports writer. She covers high school and college sports in Anne Arundel and Baltimore counties. Now, yes, Rick Hutzel, who's the editor for the Capital, wrote to me this. She's the first full-time female sports reporter in my 30 years here. Beyond that, I hesitate to say, but you've said it has been shown that you are the first full-time female sports reporter and probably the first Boston team fan here. And you do get some comments about that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Diversity in a newsroom. It's a big deal. Whether it's gender diversity or your racial or age, it gives diversity in storytelling. You agree with that?
Absolutely.
And one, you are female. You're the first full-time female sports reporter for the Capital. You're young. You're right out of college, yeah? Mm-hmm. Your view on stories and being able to tell stories that others might not tell has been, I think, a pretty cool thing.
Thank you.
You know, I was reading one of your articles, which was about Skylar Kaplan. Skylar Kaplan, tell
She's
me,
cool.
the lead is growing up. Skylar Kaplan imagined herself in the shoes of Nick Markakis as he stepped up to bat for the Orioles on her television. Now 17 years old, she played baseball on a major league training field for the second time. It goes on to say Kaplan started baseball when she was 4, but after T-ball, she noticed all of the other girls started to vanish, leaving her among boys that packed the rosters of Anne Arundel County public and private school rosters. It's kind of an amazing story.
Yeah, she's really cool. And you know, she's one of a lot of girls who kind of go through the same thing, but not as many as there should be. She, you know, started playing baseball. She noticed all the other girls disappearing because there's a stat in there that says, you know, there's roughly 100,000 girls that play baseball at a youth level, but whether they're, you know, maybe moved to softball or they just kind of are edged out for whatever reason, you know, they're considered too slow or whatever to compete with the boys, you know, it gets whittled down to just under 1,000. And Major League Baseball was trying to have a program so that, you know, these girls can play together and they can see each other, you know, again, and feel that validity and get better in the process.
And without the story, though, being in hometown papers like ours, the Capital Gazette, there's a bunch of girls out there coming up that don't realize this.
Yeah.
And so you putting this in the newspaper and telling this story, this beautiful story, that's an important thing.
Visibility is extremely important because, you know, if you don't know something exists, how are you going to continue to do that thing?
And so you also fall into that category a little bit, the female sports writer. There's not many of you still in 2019 around doing this. Do you see yourself being in a position to be able to change things like this?
100%. I was talking, I was there extremely early, which is on brand for me because I'm always at least an hour and a half early to games. And I was chatting with a softball player for Spalding, and she was telling me that she was considering going into sports journalism in college, and I was giving her tips and telling her, okay, well, you know, do this. And that's not the first time that I've sat at a stats desk with a high school kid, and she's told me, like, oh, like, I kind of want to do that. Like, can you give me some advice? You know, I'm looking at these schools, things like that. And even though it's like, okay, I've been doing this for 2-3 years, I'm not an expert, but it's nice to be able to, see girls who want to do the same thing. And I tell every single one of them, like, yes, no, we need more women. Like, yeah, absolutely follow this. Here, do this, don't do this, that kind of thing.
But people might have an image of you, for those that haven't seen you, of looking like an athlete, of looking like tomboy, of looking how I looked, for instance, when I was growing up and playing football. And I did. I loved playing tackle football. We've already mentioned you had an artsy side. Your makeup is on point in every photo I've ever seen of you. You seem to like makeup.
It's fun.
You're a girly girl.
Yeah, I had like a tomboy. I was a tomboy all the time growing up. I didn't learn how to put on makeup until college, basically, because I just wore my baseball cap and my XL t-shirt, mostly a Red Sox t-shirt, more times than not. But yeah, no, I mean, makeup's a ritual for me, and it's kind of like I feel the most myself when I go to games. I don't really feel the pressure to, I'm at a sports event, so let me like kind of look like the guys. Let me wear a polo shirt and khaki pants. I like to feel like myself.
But that's got to speak to the girls that you're seeing out on the field also. And you mentioned the relationship you have with some. Tell me about that.
Well, I mean, I saw a lot of teams repeatedly during the softball season, because softball was supposed to be my beat in a way. And there are some players, for instance, who they had a good makeup look that day. And so I would compliment, say like, hey, it's great. Like, what brand do you use? Things like that. Because, you like to talk to the kids and relate with them. And I was also genuinely interested because some of them are very good at it. And it kind of turned into, I guess it became a running joke that was mostly funny to me, that the Chesapeake softball players were going to threaten to put eyeshadow on their coach. And every once in a while I kind of sneak something in. Haley Downen always had great eyeshadow looks, and every once in a while I'd point it out, kind of like how she didn't break a sweat. It's another way of saying she didn't break a sweat. Her eyeshadow was perfect.
So while we're talking about the feminine mystique, the look, that's not all there is to you. And I don't like talking about that just in relation to a woman sports writer, because you do it all. Another article that I pulled up was about the goalie for the Bayhawks. And it was a beautiful article about this goalie that's sitting on the bench currently, but he does a lot extra for the community. So it's not, your focus isn't just on women. You can write a pretty cool article about the male athletes out there too. How does that work, being a woman in that world too?
Yeah, I like to focus, I think, and part of it just comes from, I was a giant baseball fan when I was a kid, and I didn't really let a lot of other sports in for a while. And I think part of it comes from, I like to focus on the human side of things a lot more, because that's a little bit more comfortable for me. There are some sports that I just were not around me when I was a kid, so it took me a little bit longer to learn the sport. So for me, I like to focus on the human and everybody. I think that makes a better sports story.
I think it makes a better story, period.
Right, yeah. If you write the same, if you just write about stats, if you just write about their accomplishments, I can look that up. That's what the internet's for.
Yep. In fact, one of your more recent tweets, quote, "The entire last 2 weeks for me have been writing about lacrosse," which I suppose is exactly what one would expect out of Maryland. Yeah. So you were never into lacrosse.
The lacrosse bros in middle school, I remember they all wore their like lax holiday t-shirts, and for some reason I was like, they are so off-putting to me. I can't go near them. They were the ones who'd wear the shorts in the middle of winter with the Crocs, because Crocs were very big when I was in middle school.
And patterns that don't mix.
Yeah. And then I think when I got to Carver, art students, are going to be a little pretentious and feel like, we don't hang out with them. They're the preps, And I had a friend who came from Delaney and said, oh yeah, like they're the preps, like we're art, so we're highfalutin, so but I mean, lacrosse, it's become one of like my favorite sports to cover.
It's a cool sport to watch,
and
really
really cool. Yeah.
All right, we're going to take another short break. We'll be right back on the 1430 Connection. Welcome back to the 1430 Connection. I'm Donna Cole, and in the studio with me is Katherine Fominykh. Your mother, you mentioned a lawyer. You also mentioned a Soviet background. Explain that.
So she studied Russian studies at Harvard, and she went on to teach, and she also worked in the Soviet Union for a while, too. My dad's also from the Soviet Union.
That's the last name. Okay.
Yeah, hence the last name. Yeah.
And do you eat any foods?
No,
because there's some cool ones out there.
I know, and it's funny. I know so little about Russian culture. It's actually kind of sad. I think I should have paid attention more. My mom tried to teach me Russian when I was a kid.
One of the biggest issues in sports and women, and since you are both a sports writer and a woman, obviously is the disparity in pay, men versus women. And there's some things with this that people don't often understand. Yes, there is a huge disparity. Quoting a New York Times article from this year written by Sarah Mervosh and Christina Karen, whose names I probably just messed up. There's a lot of issues here, and you've heard them all with the women's soccer team recently. Female big wave surfers advocated for change and got some. They earned a victory when the World Surf League, quoting, announced it would offer equal prize money to men and women. In the world of professional basketball, and you did mention our professional women's NBA team here in D.C., pay disparities are well documented. In the NBA, a multi-billion-dollar industry where players often make millions, the minimum starting salary is about 8 times what the average WNBA player makes. Thoughts on this? Why does this happen? When is it going to be fixed? You've spent more time in sports than I have.
I think one of the most shocking things that I learned, I covered a WNBA game last year. I was writing a feature about Angel McCoughtry, who's a Baltimore native, and I learned that the average rookie starts with about $30,000 a year, which is nothing. I mean, you cannot live on $30,000 a year.
And you actually are probably making less than that, but
I'm actually making a little bit more than that, which is sad.
All right.
I don't think there should be an athlete in the world who makes less than a journalist does. I mean, you look at the men's side, it's a joke. I mean, the men make more in 10 minutes than a WNBA rookie probably does in a year, and it leads to players, even players at the highest level like Sue Bird, Diane Taurasi, having to play overseas, and then players like Maya Moore having to take a break from basketball because it just became too much.
Is it because of sponsorships? Is it because the women don't have as many viewers on TV, as many followers, as the attendance isn't the same?
I mean,
tell me what it's all about.
They say, well, there just aren't as many fans for the sport, but you can look at the concrete evidence. Since the NWSL games, the National Women's Soccer League games, have been on TV, I've seen the stats because the league keeps posting attendance. Suddenly we have sellout games because people see it on TV. I mean, would I be a baseball fan if I didn't watch baseball games on TV? Of course not. I mean, it's hard to care for something that you can't see. WNBA engagement has gone up in the past couple of years since there's been a push for more marketing, more visibility, more kind of like that cool factor that the NBA does so well. So I think visibility is extremely important when it comes to, viewership and following. And now there's going to be a whole generation of women's sports fans because they can see it. Little girls and little boys can see these players, doing amazing things on the court and on the field.
What can the consumers help do, in your mind, to change this disparity?
Well, for one thing, they can go to games. I mean, I paid $13 to go to a WNBA game on Sunday.
That's Mystics? Is that?
Yeah, that's
insane.
Yeah,
where
that's
are
so
you going
cheap.
to? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, come on, it's not that hard. I mean, DC is 30 miles away. I mean, it's so easy, not to mention a league pass to watch the WNBA game, and that's to watch every game is, I think $17, and there's a bunch of free games on Twitter. I watched a game on Twitter the other week, and, this is like Dreams Link or something like that, like a real, game to watch.
And we're not talking just about bringing your little girls to the games. It's both. I mean, you're not going to change this dynamic until both sexes start to understand that there is this disparity.
Yeah, I saw there was a guy behind me, I swear to God, he was the biggest fan I've ever heard, and he seemed to know everything about the team. I mean, he was talking about to his friend, these stats, and then I saw in the row in front of me, these two dads had brought their sons to the game, and that's what we need. We need young boys to see, because it's the same in the reverse. It's not like I'm looking at a baseball game and thinking it's not really for me because those are men. That's insane. There's no way it can't work the other way around.
You want to change the world, huh?
Absolutely. I think part of what needs to happen is that there needs to be, like you said, a more diverse field, because if it's just men older men, they're going to only hire men that remind them of themselves because they think, oh, you're just like me. You know, I remember what it was like for me, so let me help you because you're just like me. It's the same in professional sports. It's the same on the media side of things. It's the same in hiring. There aren't enough women who work as coaches or assistant coaches on the professional level either, and that's slowly starting to change. But the fact that it's a breaking news story every single time that, you know, a woman is hired as a primarily basketball coach, we need to get to the point where it's a news story because it's a new coach, not because it's a woman.
Katherine, thank you very much for joining me today.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
This is Donna Cole. This has been the 1430 Connection. We'll see you next week.